You've entered BOOKSTORM with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Welcome back to BOOKSTORM Podcast, everyone. We have a very special treat for you here today. I know you've heard her name. We know you love her books. We have Susan Mallery with us here. Welcome, Susan.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Well, we're pretty excited that you're here. We all know that you're a #1 New York Times best-selling author, but here's something I didn't know. You have written more than 150 novels. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, it is amazing. I just, they're all about women's lives, family, friendship, romance, which is two things that Kristen and I adore. And you have had over 40 million copies of books sold worldwide. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I was very lucky to discover my passion in college. So I've been able to do this for a long time. And I needed to work because I have no other skills anymore. I have nothing.
Well, writing is a very, very important skill. Kristen and I believe this with all our heart, and you definitely belong where you are. I have to tell our listeners a little bit more. After 16 years of writing and 74 books later, now you had a lot of books that were on the New York Times, but not until after 74 books did you hit with #1. And I believe that was Thrill Me.
Yes.
And you know why I'm bringing that up? Because here you had so much success, but you stuck with it. And it's an inspiration to all of us, not even if you're a writer, to all listeners, whatever your career path is. If you love what you do, we believe, Kristen and I, it's a gift. It's your passion. It's your talent. You're good at it. It all goes together. Don't give up. And we're so glad that Susan Mallery never gave up. Booklist says this about Susan Mallery. Romance novels don't get much better than Mallory's expert blend of emotional nuance, humor, and superb storytelling. Yes, we agree. She lives in Seattle with her husband, an emotionally delicate ragdoll cat who we're hoping might pop into the picture if we're lucky, and an adorable poodle. Welcome, Susan, to BOOKSTORM. We're here to talk about this fantastic, the summer book
I have
club.
one too.
We all have one, but we should have all worn pink like Susan because I like that.
Oh, I had to coordinate with this. No, even the lipstick was like, do I have one this color? Yeah, I do.
Love it.
Well, Susan, as Chris mentioned, we're here to talk about the Summer Book Club. And I like to give our listeners just a little bit of the background of what's going on in the story. I promise I won't give away any spoilers. And at the end, if you want to add anything or comment on that summary, you are more than welcome to do so. Now, in your story, we are opening up to the lives of three women who are doing their best to navigate life in a very small town in California. Now, Laurel and Paris are best friends since they were very young. I love their relationship. And they welcome Cassie when she finds herself unexpectedly in town. She thinks just for 6 weeks or so. Laurel is a divorced mom of two daughters, and she's a little bit worried that her frustration with her ex husband is possibly corrupting her daughter's view of men. So, this is weighing on her mind. We also meet Paris and her wonderful dog Bandit. She sells produce and more at a farm stand. And she, unlike her best friend, has a very good man in her life who wants to be a part of it. But he happens to be her ex husband. We also meet Cassie. Cassie is from the other side of the country, and she has a bad habit of falling for men who aren't fully acting like men, more like boy men, and they dump her once she fixes them. And this is an ongoing pattern that she's experiencing in her life. Now, the women have a summer book club that provides some inspiration for them as they navigate some of life's trickiest challenges, and we love going along for the ride with them. Did you want to add anything to that summary?
No, I think you did a great job. I loved, the book club is actually reading old romances, and so I revisited some books I had not read in forever. It was really interesting. Things were different in the 80s, as far as the books, but it was wonderful. And so you get a little taste of, I think, two or three older books. And it's fun. It's fun. There's actually a discussion at book club where gentlemen come and talk and have surprising insights into one of these romances.
I didn't want to give that away, but I thought
Oh,
that was one of my favorite parts
it
of the
was fun. It
story.
was fun. And one of my favorite, the book I picked for that book club meeting was a personal favorite that I remember from years ago. So yeah, so the books were chosen very deliberately. My assistant and I brainstormed a list of old romances, and I went through and I looked them up to see which ones I'd want to reread, and it was interesting. So all the books they read, I also read as quote unquote research. So hard. Oh, honey, I'm working.
Yeah, yeah.
Our two favorite things, reading and writing. Wonderful. Well, I have to say for our listeners, forget all your troubles and enter the wonderful world of friendship, lost relationships, and new love. Cassie, Laurel, and Paris, three women with very different personalities and lives and loves, and we loved each and every one of them. You showed the reader that life can change in one day. The meeting of a new person, a move to a new location, a new job. But at what point was it up to Cassie, Laurel, and Paris to embrace that change or accept it? And I couldn't help but wonder, do we all miss out on opportunities? Some call it the butterfly effect because we're closed minded.
I completely agree. I think we do. And I would just like to say none of these women embrace the change. They're they're dragged or thrown out, kicking and screaming. The change is forced upon them. For Laurel, it is the discovery that she never really says bad things about her ex. She's not one of those women who trash talks her ex, but it's kids hear everything. And it is sort of a subtle thing that it is actually it's on the first page of the book where there's a problem. And then Laurel discovers very quickly what it is. And she's a wonderful mom. She has a problem now. She's got to solve it. Her kids need a male role model in their life. And she looks around, and except for her friend Paris's dog Bandit, there are no males in their circle. They just somehow that hasn't happened. So how do you fix that? And Paris also she has to deal with her ex-husband who is back in town for his mother's going to have surgery, and he's there to help. And she's now got to face her past. It's not like she thought, okay, I need to self-heal, I'm going to deal with this. It's like this stuff came up and said, oh honey, we're here, and now you have to deal with this. And Cassie literally is kicking and screaming as she has to go from where she lives in Maine to California. And she initially hates California. And I love that because I grew up in LA. So I'm all about California and the avocado. So she hates the avocados. She thinks Californians eat too many. The ocean looks wrong. It does not look like Bar Harbor where she is born and raised. So it was fun. It was just fun. But yes, they all are reluctant heroines into their journey, which makes, as the writer, is the most fun. If they want to do it, then it's like, where's the fun in that? Torture. One wants to torture one's characters.
And I think my favorite is Cassie because it's not giving away a spoiler that her family makes her go. They make her go. Now, even though they all didn't want the change, at some point they're willing to a little bit consider a little, like all of us in the real world. Cassie, especially, we just wanted something good to happen to her because of her hardship, because of everything that she went through growing up. And thanks for giving us that. Yeah, we saw, I guess you could say we saw a lot of growth in her.
Yes, I think they all grow in different ways. To me, Paris grows the least. She was already where she needed to be. She just couldn't see it. And we often can't see change in ourselves. And so Cassie has the most growth to do. And I think in some ways the most difficult journey, because part of her problem at the beginning is her entire, her worldview, not her worldview, her self-view, her place in the world, is she basically thinks she takes care of everything, and her siblings tell her, yeah, you don't. And so if you see yourself as one way and then realize the world doesn't see you that way, you lose your anchor. You lose your true place in the universe. And if you don't know where you belong, that is one of the most uncomfortable feelings, because who are you? We all define ourselves by, different identities. So-and-so's mom, so-and-so's pet mom. I'm the wife, I'm the mother, I'm the writer. If you suddenly, all those things are taken from you, we're unanchored. So poor Cassie goes to California, where there are too many avocados, and has to discover who and what she is. And of course she meets the perfect man, and she is not in an emotional place to be able to deal with. And he was great, because he truly is the perfect man. It's like, oh my God, so handsome. So
Okay,
handsome.
I got it. Okay, what's it? I have to say this one quote, and I gotta let Kristen do her question. And I don't think this is giving it away, because I'm not going to give any names. But when Cassie sees this man, she says, the sunlight was behind him for just a second. He was in a silhouette, like some scene from a movie. He was tall, he was built, and the way he moved, yummy, she thought happily, just plain yummy, like lunch in a show. I laughed right out loud at that. I love that. Loved it.
There were a lot of funny parts in your book. I laughed out loud. But I want to go back to something a little more on the serious side that you had just brought up, and that is this idea of Laurel and some of the opinions about her ex-husband and whether they transferred to her daughters. She was very worried that perhaps she skewed her daughter's perception of men. And, the daughter had been observing things. Her dad wasn't present, wasn't there, wasn't showing up for them. How important do you think it is to have both male and female role models for children, especially at this preteen age? What do you think?
I think it is important. I think we need to, at that age, we are discovering how to exist in society. And I think the more flexible a person can be, the easier it is for them to be happy. And we don't know this stuff instinctively. We learn by seeing and doing and hearing and overhearing. And it is surprising how much children learn from observation. Mom and dad get in a fight at the dinner table about a donation to a charity. There's 1,000 things in that one fight about what it is to give, what is the family's philosophy of giving, can you give too much? Why do we give to these I mean, it's just, and that's one tiny microcosm, just one 5-minute heated conversation. So I think it is very important. And as parents, it's really easy to forget the kids are listening. I don't think any of us want to say the wrong thing or pass on a negative message like that, but it of course happens. And in Laurel's case, it was her daughter it's her older daughter, and she is naturally protective. She's very angry at her father for leaving. And Laurel really tried, but every night her daughter heard her crying after they were supposed to be in bed. And it is difficult to it is difficult to say how. I mean, that is such an impression on a child. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, my mother and I did not get along. But if I made her cry, it's like, oh my God, just stab me, because that would be better. I hated that feeling. I hate that feeling. And at Christmas, and my husband is my age, at Christmas, we were at his mom's house, and he was walking around doing something. And she's like, sit down. It was the tone. And and we're all like, oh, you're in trouble. It never goes away. So to see her mother so shattered by what her father did, was life-changing for her. And so it started her down a path, and suddenly Laurel has this big problem and she's got to fix it. She's going to fix it. But how you teach your daughter that there are good men out there when there aren't any good men around simply because of circumstances was an interesting proposition, and it led to some very funny things. So
Yeah, it did. And what as you were talking, I was thinking about how easily we can cripple our children's future relationships by projecting some of those attitudes. And I know a person who every time she refers to the daughter's father, she rolls her eyes. And
got it.
I recently noticed the daughter doing the same when she was talking about men. And I thought that was just an interesting little example, but I know there are 10 other examples that I could bring up that I now can see are impacting this daughter's life as a young adult.
Exactly. And so it is teaching people to be respectful of, or teaching children to be respectful of others when we are not respectful ourselves is an impossible task, because they don't believe what we say, they do believe what we do. And so it is a challenge. And one of the things is, as the writer, that made this so great is what works in a story, and this is a behind the scenes secret, is there have to be stakes for the character. And sometimes I'll get an idea and it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It just has to be important to that character, and we can believe it as the reader. So for me, finding Laurel, when I realized who she was and what her issue was, it was like, oh my God, the stakes are so high. They cannot be more high than your children. There is nothing more important to a parent than their children, especially when they're vulnerable, as her girls were. So it was just like, oh, it was a blessing from the book fairy. To be able to have that, those are the stakes I want to be writing about, because they're so important. So much is on the line. And because so much is on the line, Laura will do anything. And she kind of does.
I love that. I mean, every one of these characters, yes, they had some flaws. They're real people. We can relate to them. And I also saw, flip side, they were all good people. They all had some good characteristics. They cared about other people. They helped other people. They were kind to other people. Even Paris, who had temper issues because of her past, had some goodness and kindness in her. But as the reader, I looked at them at one point, I thought, at some time in our life, it's okay for us to take a pause from caring for everyone around us and care about ourselves. And I wondered what you thought about that. There was a quote from the book that said, "You weren't living your life, you were living their lives." I'm not going to say who said it. I don't want to give a spoiler. Is it a fine line between helping others and helping ourselves? And how do we all know, and even these characters, when it's okay now and then to put ourselves first?
I think that's a great question. And it is hard to know. It's hard to know in life when we put ourselves, when it's okay to say, I need a break. Um, so, and yes, self-care is very popular right now, but that is self-care in theory. It's not, it's easy to talk about. It's really hard to do. And I think that's true in life, and it certainly happens in the books. As far as them being good people, I tend to mostly write. When I'm going to give someone a starring role in a book, it needs to be somebody I want to have lunch with. Or, if they're one of the guys that were a bit younger, I'd sleep with. Those are my criteria. Some of them are shallow. I admit that. Somebody asked me once, why are your men all so good looking? It's like, because we all have sex. The
Yes.
three of us, we do it. I have to picture it. Then I have to write about it. Then I have to edit it. They need to be attractive. It's petty and shallow, and I accept the judgment. It's totally fine, but it's what I choose to do. I think one of the things that's interesting to me in this book is, of the three characters, is Paris. Because part of taking care of oneself, I think, is giving oneself grace. To be able to say, I need a break, or I made a mistake. And Paris was very willing to talk about her mistakes. She was kind of living in her mistakes, but she was not willing to give herself grace. And she could not see you know, she's like the person who's lost 50 pounds who says, I can't see it until you see photos side by side. And then it's like, oh, well, I guess I did lose weight. For Paris, there's no photo of her, who she was and who she is now. So her journey is to, it's interesting because normally in books, everybody has to grow and change. And if it's a Susan Mallery character, you have to earn your happy ending. You don't just get it. Paris actually, her change doesn't occur. She has changed. She can't see it. She doesn't know she's changed, and she doesn't believe she deserves a happy ending. So her journey is from an inability to see herself as she truly is, which is a wonderful person, because she was so awful. And it was fun because apparently anger is like a thing, and it can be a way of life for people. And I have a wonderful friend who I brainstorm with, and she's the one who brought Paris to me. I had Paris, but I hadn't figured her out. And she said, I think it should be anger. And she sent me all these articles, and I'm like, how do you know this stuff? And it was her. And I'm like, you've never said a harsh word. And she's like, well, I'm better now. It's like, okay, you really are, because I've known you forever and you've never uttered a harsh word. But it is like, you know, people have alcohol problems or drug problems, or they're codependent. People have anger problems. And I never knew. I just have never had angry people in my life. But it was very interesting to do the research. I always enjoy learning something new. As I said, I love that Paris's journey is, she's already there. She's already there. And it's like everyone around her can see she's there, but she can't. And it was wonderful when she was finally willing to say, I might be better. And it was just very precious for me.
I loved her. And how about maybe I do deserve something good in my life.
Yes.
We can relate to this. We all sort of think, well, did I earn it? Do I deserve it? And it felt so good to see her evolve into someone better. I wish we could really dive down deep into the details, but I don't want to give it away.
Well, just very quickly about Paris, one of the things that I really loved about her journey was she couldn't see people had forgiven her until she could forgive herself.
Mhm.
And she couldn't forgive herself. And once she was able to do that, she could then see the forgiveness in others. So, and there's some very funny stuff about Paris, and when Paris and Laurel were children, how they dealt with Paris's temper. It was a quick, easy, never was a problem again. Anyway, it was fun.
I loved it.
I want to pick up on things you both just said. You were talking about giving yourself some grace. I want to talk about self-sabotage, because this is an issue I think that many people deal with. And several of your characters had these moments where they didn't think they deserved love or happiness or someone's interest. So they ran, either emotionally or even physically, which were some of the very funny parts of the book. Or they even acted in a way that would push somebody away. Why do people do this to themselves, this self-sabotage? Is it fear or insecurity, or perhaps, as you were talking about, not seeing their worth or their value?
I think there's a lot of reason people self-sabotage. I think one of the biggest ones is sometimes the pain of not having it's uncomfortable, but I always remember the line from Pretty Woman where she's got the table setting and it's like, can we have salad? Because that's the fork I know. That's the pain. You already have that pain, so you know you can deal with it. But if you ask for something and don't get it, that is a different pain. And what if it's too big? What if you can't handle it? So I think self-sabotage is a form of protection to, I'm going to disappoint me because I'm okay with that one. But if you disappoint me, or what if you expose something in me? I don't know that I can handle that. I will be devastated. So I think that's a lot of it. I also think some self-sabotage comes from how we were raised. Some of us were raised with, parents who told us we could do anything. And some of us were raised by parents who said, yeah, I wouldn't try that, you're probably not going to make it. And so why would you put yourself through that? Why would you take the chance? So it really, and some of us, I think, have a psychological makeup. I mean, it's like, what is your, what drives you? You know, when I started writing, it did not occur to me that I would fail. And I was just on a mission, and nothing was going to stop me. And that is my personality. I just focus and I do. And it is, and I just will do all the work. But not everybody does that. And some people are, they just don't want to, or it's just, we're all very, very different. So I think self-sabotage comes in a lot of different forms. I find it, as a writer, it's fun for characters, because the reader is screaming, don't do it. You get up to that point and it's like, you can do it or not do it. You can learn your lesson, but look, there's 200 pages left. You're probably not going to learn it yet.
Well, that's why we love fiction. And, your characters struggling with those very real issues. That's why we love reading books like this, because we can see the choices they made and sometimes reflect on us being in that position and what we did do or what we would do. And I know, for instance, in this one case, I got to one point, and I'm not going to say what happened, but I was like, no, no, don't do it. Cassie, don't do it. and,
Yeah.
and again, that's what keeps you glued.
I know. And no, it is very, it's interesting, some of the conversation. Yeah, because I have this thing I want to say, and I'm not going to say it because spoiler.
It's tough.
Well, Kristen, I know you weren't talking about the hunky Raphael with when you're saying, Cassie, don't do it, because the rest of us were saying, do it. Do it.
We'll have an offline discussion about that, Chris.
So, Susan Mallery, it's been just a pleasure. Now, before we let you go, are you writing another book?
I am. This is, I've been doing 2 books a year, but I will tell you, 2024 is the blessing year. I have 3 books out this year. So next up for me is a book called For the Love of Summer. And I will just, if I may, just a little tiny, it is the world's most impossible situation. It's 2 women. One of is the ex-wife, and one of them is the current wife. And it is an impossible situation where they have to deal with each other, and it's just so juicy and wonderful. I can't even tell you. It's so much joy. And then in October, I'm doing a Christmas book again. I didn't do one last year, and wow, did I hear about it. So Christmas book is coming. It's called One Big Happy Family. And a mother with 2 adult children is, so what I wanted to call it was Don't Come Home for Christmas. Her kids have plans for Christmas. She's super happy because she has a new, much younger boyfriend she has not told them about. And it turns out everybody comes home for Christmas at her place, including his children, his ex-wife, her daughters lose her boyfriend. The house gets more and more crowded, and it's wonderful. And when there's a dog, because there has to be a dog. So it's funny. It's all the Christmas feels. And that one was a blast to write, start to finish. And I actually wrote it at the holidays, which never happens, but my schedule worked. Normally you're writing these books in like March, which is not when you want to be listening to Dolly Parton singing Christmas music. So I got to write it like October, November. It was perfect. Put a tree up in my office. It was fun. So yeah, so 2 books after this one, For the Love of Summer, and One Big Happy Family, AKA Don't Come Home for Christmas.
And the plot thickens.
Oh, they're so
Christmas.
fun. They're both, yeah, that was fun. But yeah,
I
had
love
a
the
good time.
sound. Love the sound of owls. I want to put the cover of this back up again. The Summer Book Club. You've got to pick it up. You're going to love it. Or any of Susan Mallery's 150 books. You're an inspiration.
Oh,
And the fact that you're getting all these ideas to write more and more books, you are absolutely supposed to be where you are. Thank you for writing these great stories. They're not only entertaining, but they matter. They touch our hearts in different ways. We love them. And let me tell our listeners, please connect with Susan Mallery. You can find her at susanmallery.com. You have a very active website where you can become a member of her website. You'll be eligible for contests, giveaways, free book excerpts, recipes, short stories, and more. You can also find her on Facebook, X, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. You're everywhere. And we're happy.
I know. You can tell whether I'm writing or not as to how often I am on social media in a day.
It's been a real pleasure and a lot of fun. We hope to see you back here sometime soon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You both were lovely. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Susan. Take care now. Okay, this book navigated some of life's trickiest issues. And I want to go back to one of those because Susan did such a good job of laying the table for us. And that is these attitudes we project on our children because we're in some ways we are preparing them for their future spouse, their future significant other. And it almost makes you go back in your mind and think, what have I conveyed? And
It's so true.
that make you kind of think about that important role that as parents we have in their future
Yeah.
relation.
And not even in a situation of divorce, but just as a parent with strong opinions on any given topic that's in the
Yes.
world today. And isn't that how prejudices get pushed down from generation to generation because of some ignorant parent? And the child just grows up hearing this. And I guess let me push this back to you and ask you, how does a child grow out of those parental opinions and education, secondary education? How do we evolve out of that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, actually. Um, well, I think in terms of when you go into the workforce, when you go maybe to college, you've got people who are going to put you back in your place and repeatedly tell you things about yourself in subtle ways and not so subtle ways that hopefully you have the maturity to evaluate. And I always tell my kids this, I tell my students this, when you hear something more than once, twice, three times, you want to pay attention because there's probably something there. And, everybody can have their unique opinion about you. But again, you hear it repeatedly, pay attention. And I also think that, teaching our children, we may have attitudes we project onto them, but one of the important skills is teaching them how to reflect and evaluate their own choices. Was that a good choice? Was that a bad choice? What were the negative results? So, even if you're teaching them wrong things in terms of attitudes, if you've taught them to reflect, maybe that's a way they could grow out of it. I don't know. What do you think? Because we're both parents of adults
I
and we,
agree. I totally agree. And I also think let's take parenting away and just say in kindergarten, you send your child off to school, they're not yours anymore. They're learning all kinds of things all through middle school, high school, college, masters. They're being taught. I guess I like what you're saying that we have to give them the skills to learn on their own, to continue to learn, not to be stuck in one rut. And I like that. I think Susan's characters, although they begrudgingly entered a new phase in life, they let it in slow and steady. They tested it, they sampled it, they let a little more, they let a little more. And it was a good lesson for all of us. Let me ask you something else that this is a fun topic. Are you a believer in love at first sight? Now, the three women debated this, and Colton said, I'm going to quote, attraction at first sight, absolutely. But the kind of love that lasts a lifetime, that has to develop. Oh, I thought those were wise words. How about you, Kristen?
when I read that, I was right on board with Colton because, lust at first sight, absolutely. Love at first sight, I think our definition of love has to be made explicit. And to me, it is a choice to honor, to respect someone. And it's a choice you make almost every day. And your thinking, your attitude towards them, giving them grace when you don't want to, that can't be instantaneous. That's something I believe that has to be tested over and over in different situations. I mean, I don't know. Knowing you as I do, I feel like you probably agree. Do
I
you?
totally agree. I mean, there's something fun, and especially in this book. And I love the characters that she develops and the love interests that she develops. It's a lot of fun. Um, and she does, however, show us, even in this story, that after the initial love at first sight, there has to be something substantial. Whether or not you agree with everything may be secondary, but can you respect each other's opinions? Are you a listener? Are you a supporter? At one point in a relationship, you have to be able to put the other person ahead of you and above you, even temporarily. And I saw that even in the story. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to have me to bring up on here? It's just a great book. I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah. Well, just that I love that she includes dogs in her story. I love animals. I know we both love dogs. And in this story, that dog also demonstrated unconditional love. And I thought that was really a cool way of just giving a pure example of devotion, loyalty, enjoyment, joy. And to me, that's what that dog represented in this story.
Dog pets are unconditional love. And Kristen, next time we get a dog book, you have to have your dogs be our special guest in the background. And we got to plan that for next time. Our listeners want to see it. So everyone stay on the radar with Bookstorm podcast. We've got a full lineup of wonderful novels ready for you. We have Mary Kubica, Michelle Gable, Dervla McTiernan, Lisa Unger, Heather Gudenkoff, Liza Palmer, Christopher Reich, Ashley Elston, Amiko Jean, Benjamin Stevenson, JD Parker, CJ Box, and we're not done yet.
And listeners, we have you in 77 countries or territories, all 50 states, 1,600 plus cities. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your feedback. And thank you, of course, to these fantastic, wonderful authors who come on to discuss their books. I know they love diving deep, and we know that you do as well. So stay on the radar with us. You can find us at bookstormpodcast.com. We are at Facebook, on Instagram, on X, on TikTok. We are on YouTube. We have 125 plus authors. Go back into our archives. You will love hearing from them. They have so many interesting backstories, things you don't always get to see when you read the story or the book jacket about them.